Hello, everyone. My name is Spencer Walsh. Welcome to today's show. We have a good one for you, as always. Today, we have updates coming in on the latest from the multiple, really, apocalyptic situations in the hospitals coming in Gaza. We'll give you some live updates with regards to that. Also, some new reporting from the Times of Israel, one of the more right-wing papers. I've heard it compared to, like the New York Post of Israel. They have reported that Israel has revised their death toll from the October 7th Hamas assault, dropping it from 1,400 to 1,200. We'll take a look at that and the interesting double standard in terms of scrutiny of the dead that has been applied on the Palestinians versus the Israelis. Also, interesting reporting from Haaretz today about the Israeli army chief who seems to be getting along with at least one Palestinian. We'll tell you who that is a little bit later on in the show. Also, they are coming for Rashida Tlaib, and really why it's so important to protect her. We'll take a look at the efforts to start a primary challenge here, starting with essentially a pretty tough piece in the New York Times and a pretty much blatant suggestion by the head of DMFI that they're coming, they'll be back. Don't worry about it. And also a really incredible and horrific story from Hind Kudari, who recently left Gaza from the south. And the guilt that she feels in the wake of that, really just an unimaginable situation. We'll get into all of it. As you are listening to Newsflash. So we are going to get right into it today with the latest from the really horrific situation and just what looks to be just an absolutely beyond horror of a situation with Israel besieging the Al-Quds hospital as firefights broke out at Al-Quds, which has now ceased operations amid Israeli attacks. And again, I cannot understand why they want to and so just target, again, a bunch of sitting ducks civilians. It just, absolutely, beyond all comprehension. And there have been reports, again, this is no, targeted operation. This is no, surgical hunt for Hamas. This is no, special forces getting in there and just, rooting out the terrorists from inside the hospital. They're surrounding the hospital and they're sniping off people who try to leave. They're trying to trap them because, again, they know that is the center of life in Gaza right now. There's the only places that have any sort of resources, that have any sort of life-sustaining capacity, in order to just live a 21st century humane, habitable life. To charge your phone, to take a shower, to try and find some food, to try and be in a place with electricity. Like, those are the only places that just maybe, and now increasingly all the big ones, especially in the north, are shutting down. It is really, really incredible to see them consciously try and target it. Again, so apparently, Gaza's two largest hospitals, Al-Shifa and Al-Quds, have officially both closed after running out of fuel. More than 11,200 Palestinians have been killed in Israeli attacks on Gaza since October 7th. In Israel, the official death toll from Hamas's attacks, as we talked about just before, and we will be talking about further later in the show, there stands at 1,200. So, let's get into some quick updates off the top here about the just general situation. Biden has given remarks urging Israel to protect Gaza's main hospital. It's my hope and expectation there will be less intrusive action relative to the hospital. The hospital must be protected. So again, what is he going to, there's been every single, it's almost like a pro forma taking of the box when it comes to Biden to, remind Israel of their human rights obligations. When it comes to, just very recent situations like the Ukraine-Russia situation, the war there. We had people crying on the White House podium. The same people who say, we'll have to wait for international law to investigate, what the situation is here. It's just, again, it's paying lip service, while meaningly really based on the reports, there's just a whole host of incredibly annoying people that you're going to see coming out in terms of in greater and greater number as we get closer to election season, trying to say that Joe Biden, he's really doing everything to try and stop this from being, even worse. He would have made it, if Trump had been in place, it would have been, even worse. But the fundamental fact of the situation is Joe Biden Biden has placed no restraint, no real restraint on the situation. Donald Trump would not place any restraint on the situation. It's not like they are planning out the, specific genocide of the Palestinian people. Israel is doing that. What the U.S. can do in this situation is systematically remove the restraint or remove the support that they have put behind this country that is doing these awful crimes on a daily basis. But Biden has said, he has refused. And people in the White House have said that, this is after they've written so many, genuine, super concerned, super passionate letters. So we're really troubled by this, guys. You should really do something about it. After all that was exhausted, they're like, we could try and condition aid, but Joe Biden just likes Israel too much. So we're pooped, guys. Sorry. This is, and then they expect from the Democratic base people to turn around and be like, oh, thank you so much for what you did. You really saved us here. This is such a big, big, big help. You are really a humanitarian. You are doing this. It's just it's a joke. It is a joke. And it is insulting to a lot of people who are out there, both who are following this conversation, I think also both people who are just trying to live their life and put food on their table and keep a roof over their heads, because it's just the government and the people who support the government, unquestionably, and, make careers out of supporting the government. They are lying to you about a very, very important crime that the United States is funding in almost completely here. We're the sole external funder. In terms of the biggest way, EU contributing a little bit, but, Israel, when it comes to, they could not do what they do without the, just cover of the U.S. And he's not threatening to remove any of that. It's just, again, statements like this. It's my hope and expectation there will be less intrusive action relative to the hospital. Again, thank you very much. It's ridiculous. Meanwhile, according to Tariq Abu Azum from, I believe, Khan Yunis, the Jabalia refugee camp has been massively struck in the last couple of hours. 12 houses have been completely destroyed due to multiple airstrikes, claiming the lives of more than 30 Palestinians. There are still some people under the rubble, as the civil defense team is no longer able to evacuate them due to the lack of equipment. Again, just put yourself in the situation. Say, even just say you're in an earthquake, for example. Just that alone, hearing your child under the rubble and they're not able to get out, that would be a situation that would stay with you for the rest of your life. It would be probably, one of the worst ways to go imaginable. But that is happening hundreds and hundreds of times, probably a day at this point, throughout the Gaza Strip, as there are and it's an intentional act. It's not some act of God. It's not an act of nature. It is an intentional act. Not only the fact that those buildings are being bombed, but the fact that they don't even have the machinery, they don't even have the rubble to bring them out, or the ability to bring them out and properly dispose of their dead, just having to bury them in mass graves if they can get them out at all. There's been, probably countless mothers throughout the Gaza Strip that are fathers or siblings or friends who have heard the cries of their loved ones under the rubble and just had to sit there unable to get them as they pass away. It is unimaginable. It is unimaginable. It is beyond American comprehension. It is, and the fact that it's just, again, it's just, we need the only way we can just process this is to, I feel like, at least for me, just being able to just tell people about it, just be able to say, this is what's happening, wake up, wake up, wake up, it does kind of feel like all I can do at this moment, but it's just absolutely shocking stuff. So apparently, according to the spokesperson for the Al-Qassam Brigades, which is Hamas military wing, Abu Obaida, they're saying that they have been working with Qatar on securing an exchange between the group that Israel would involve the release of 200 Palestinian children and 75 women from Israeli prisons. In exchange, Al-Qassam would release between 50 and 70 captives, all women and children. Again, a perfectly fine deal. And apparently Israel has stifled that. They are evading and procrastinating. It's jeopardizing not only the lives of the Palestinian civilians, but it also doesn't care about killing its own captives, which again, these are people, they're not just going to be dropping dead because of, their own free will or just something that, Hamas did to them. It's way more Israeli created ways to die in Gaza than any ways that could come from any actions traceable to Hamas there. I think it's very, very clear, especially, it would be nice to see some statement from Qatar about this, but their effort of, just to, add to some sort of credibility in relation to somebody like, Abu Ubaidah, who is, not the most trustworthy of all people, being that he is, of course, the spokesperson for the Al-Qassam brigades. So, again, they would release about 50 to 70 captives, all women and children, in exchange for 200 Palestinian kids and 75 women from Israeli prisons. The brigade asked for a 5-day truce that would include a ceasefire and allow humanitarian aid to enter the Gaza Strip. So, again, this idea that, they don't want to release the hostages, there's no sort of procrastination. Again, what Israeli wants is, just complete capitulation. They want hostage release without any conditions, without any effort to free or consider freeing the people, even the people without charge in Palestinian Israeli prisons, which I would argue are, hostages under any standard of, or political prisoners under any standard of international, law, even when they, detain a political prisoner, like, when they detain that journalist in Iran, or they detain the journalist in Russia, or, they make up a bogus charge. Like, they don't even do that in Israel. Like, they just take these people in, no matter what. So it is really shocking stuff. It apparently says that an Israeli woman who was taken alive into captivity but was killed in an Israeli airstrike a few days ago, according to Abu Ubaidah, which, again, I think you need more than one source on that, but it's a certainly plausible situation. The ship, which apparently docked earlier today, a new ship has docked in Egypt, coming from Turkey, carrying humanitarian equipment necessary to set up field hospitals on the Egyptian side of the border with Gaza. 500 tons of aid equipment, according to the Anadolu agency, including medicine, medical devices, and 20 ambulances. So shout out to the Turkish people sending some, Erdogan sending some aid to his fellow Muslims in Gaza. So that is another, kind of instance going on. But really the biggest story right now, Jabalia refugee camp hit with fresh attacks and the continuing besiegement of the Al-Quds hospital. All right, so now we go to our next story. It's coming from the Times of Israel here. Israel said Friday it has revised the death toll of the October 7th attack on Israeli communities and military bases in southern Israel, down from roughly 1,400 to roughly 1,200. The revised figure was provided by the Foreign Ministry spokesperson Lior Hayat, as Israel continues its painstaking effort to identify all victims 5 weeks after the atrocities took place. So again, where did they get that 1,400 extra to 200 difference? So again, no details were offered on the reason for the revised figures, but beyond the victims, Israel has said some 1,500 terrorists are believed to have been killed by security forces as the attack in the Israeli response unfolded, leaving authorities with thousands of corpses to process. And the question that I have here is, again, last week it was 60 plus. Now it's all of a sudden 1,500. And there is 1,400 Israelis dead for the longest time, for about a month. And all of a sudden now there's 1,200. I don't get, why these people, these tolls, these corpses can go up and down. It's like, the truck, the rows of bodies that we processed just looked a little bigger than we thought. So we just looked the eyeball 1,400, but now that we're working through it, we're getting to 1,200. Like, that's the only explanation I can think of, that you would overestimate the number of corpses that are dead. And then of course this whole terrorist situation is, I think, something that isn't also worthy of some scrutiny, because again, they were saying 60 plus like last week, and all of a sudden, wow, it's 1,500. Okay, they must have gotten them all in one particular UN school. That's where they're hiding out, and of course there'd be some Zionist people saying, yeah, that's right, they were hiding out in that UN school. It's just like, again, it requires insane amounts of cognitive dissonance. I think at least for me as a incredibly privileged white American male, so to sit in America, just to continue to process, to deal with the just depravity of the rhetoric coming from these people. It is hard to imagine, if you're someone, someone over there, or you're a Palestinian yourself, like, what that must be like. It is incredible. So, and again, just any explanation on these figures would be nice. Again, so it is very, very important. So the death toll is likely to continue to fluctuate for some time to come. Although some of the over 240 people abducted into the Strip are thought to not be alive, there are no official estimates. Yeah, again, how did they come to not be alive? How did that happen? It's just incredible writing here from the Times of Israel. Additionally, as time has passed, there's been a steady trickle of reports on individuals who have been thought to have been kidnapped, but who have since been confirmed through forensic and other evidence to have died. Again, that would cause the death toll to go up, not down. So again, it's just really, really kind of crazy situation here. I just do not get where any of this is coming from. It just really, but here's the broader point. Again, in all, it just requires, it's just some sort of laughter-driven insanity, I feel like, sometimes, to just process some of the stuff. But I feel like another really important thing to say is the president of the United States publicly cast, not publicly cast doubt, just straight up, lied about and accused the Palestinians of lying about, by extension, the number of people that they had lost, the number of, grandmothers, the number of, kids, the number of infants, the number of, whatever that had been bombed and blown to bits by Israeli forces. And then that launched a massive amount of speculation. Every single Israeli attack on Palestine was scrutinized. Oh, it wasn't that bad. It wasn't this. It wasn't that. And here Israel is, just saying, oh, we said 1,400 people. Actually, it was 1,200. And we also just killed, 1,400 terrorists that we can say for sure with conclusive proof. No, obviously not. That we're terrorists, and we know we can point out the names of the people because we check them off our list, all that stuff. They can't do any of that. And it's reported, again, not only is it report, there is no skepticism applied to any of these figures from the Israelis at all whatsoever. It's just saying, overestimate your dead by 200. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You just make up random numbers, and we will not ask you for any evidence. Personally, I think both sides really should be allowed to, say how many dead they've had, unless it's just completely obviously BS. And I think it was really just crossing a new level of just depravity, and just when not only Israel said the Palestinians are lying about their dead, which they've been saying for, of course, years, but the president said from the White House that there is no way, I have no doubt, he said, that Palestinians are lying about how many dead that they have. I think that, really did pass a new low. But, again, there is no scrutiny. There is no criticism or any sort of questioning about any of this. You will not see it covered in any other major way. And it just really is remarkable, the different standards that we do see, as, again, just endless periods of speculation about the awfulness, the awful horror of, these Hamas barbarians who are lying about the number of people that they killed. It was actually 12 people that died in the Al-Shifa hospital, or the Al-Aqli hospital bombing. It was actually, these people, they didn't really die. They're lying about their number of dead. They're not telling the truth. Again, but then once Israel just throwing off 200, who cares? It's, again, really, really remarkable stuff. I think it's important really to bring it to everyone who's, lucky enough to listen, at least in my opinion, their attention. All right. Meanwhile, we have Herzi Halevi, the Israeli army chief, who is, leading this campaign in Gaza. He praised the PA, the Palestinian Authority, for its collaboration with occupation forces in the West Bank, which could give you an idea of why there are so many protests, particularly directed towards the PA in the West Bank, and also why it is so ridiculous that the Anthony Blinken and the U.S. strategy is to give the PA a promotion to controlling Gaza as well. The army chief made these comments, and it really is quite remarkable here. So Haaretz said that Halevi said the PA has been working in recent weeks to prevent demonstrations and marches in support of Hamas and its massacres. The army chief made the comments to Israeli lawmakers at Hakira, the Israeli military command compound in the heart of a Tel Aviv civilian neighborhood, which, all I have to say to that is, what kind of animals would put military installations and military centers in civilian neighborhoods? Only people who, just don't care about civilian life. And that's all I have to say about that. Anyway, Halevi rebuffed a claim by Zvi Sukkot, a lawmaker from the ultra-far-right Jewish Power Party, that member of government, Jewish Power Party, that Palestinian Authority security forces were preparing to turn on their Israeli partners in solidarity with Hamas. According to Haaretz, Halevi replied that he did not see information in the intelligence collected to prove this, and noted that the PA works every day to prevent demonstrations in support of Hamas, first and foremost because of the interests of the PA itself. Which again, perfectly, I think, really does illustrate why the PA is so problematic and why it is viewed with so much disgust by the Palestinians. So Halevi's assessment confirms that of Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant, who earlier this month publicly called for tax revenues collected on PA's behalf by Israel to be turned over to Ramallah. The state of Israel is interested in maintaining stability in Judea and Samaria, especially during these times, Gallant said, using Israel's pseudo-biblical terminology for the occupied West Bank. The funds should be transferred immediately so that they may be used by the operational mechanism of the PA and by sectors of the PA that are dealing with prevention of terrorism. Israel refers to any sort of protest or resistance, by the way, it's important to note, to its military dictatorship over Palestinians, but carried out as well by settlers, some of the most vicious, disgusting people on the face of the planet. These people, these West Bank settlers are, again, this includes boycotts or human rights advocacy or any sort of protests, that, especially unarmed protests, that is also terrorism. Israeli lawmakers have even pressed Halevi on why Israel was not being even more brutal to the Palestinians in the occupied West Bank. According to Haaretz, Halevi replied that the IDF wanted to preserve the West Bank as a quiet front and not to introduce another front into fighting. So again, this idea of the lawmakers, these elected body, the people, they're just trying to be, calm, trying to be reasonable. They're just, so grief stricken. They're angry. They're upset. They're going to be sick. They just care about getting the hostages back. No, they want to wipe out. They are using this as the opportunity to do something, let's just put it this way, that they wanted to do for quite a long time. The U.S., as Halevi noted, is particularly concerned with preserving the PA. Now, on Wednesday, Secretary of State Anthony Blinken suggests that following a hoped Israeli defeat of the Palestinian resistance in Gaza, the PA could be brought in to rule the ruins of Gaza on behalf of the Israeli regime that is committing the genocide there. And I think this quote itself from Herzi Halevi, this Israeli army chief, is going to make that essentially impossible. All right. But we'll see, Blinken and, be the next of a long line of U.S. and kind of just generally kind of colonial figures to try and put one governing group onto a people and, redraw borders in a way that just will never be popular. He's not exactly in, shall I say, good company there, or successful company, to say the least. All right, so we have that going on in the West Bank, some pretty, just continuing chaos. 100 and I think it was, 80, settler deaths, or settler-caused deaths, I should say, have now been reported in the West Bank since the start of the October conflict, which is pretty remarkable. Again, people who are not under the control of Hamas. Either way, we got to get back to the to domestic territory here, because for more than a month, the suburbs of Detroit have played host to vigils where victims of the war between Israel and Hamas are commemorated with prayers, candles, and tearful speeches. But those vigils have told starkly differing stories of the war, and also about Rashida Tlaib, who represents the area and is the only Palestinian American in Congress. Yeah, that's right. We got the New York Times here. They are, they're getting ready for 2024, and specifically what is going to be a primary challenge and pretty much a war, essentially. I think what it's shaping up to be over Rashida Tlaib's seat. Like, think about what has led up to this, in the wake of the, Rashida Tlaib using the river to the sea. And I think what probably pissed a lot more people off is saying, A, that Joe Biden supports a genocide, and B, that she will remember and by extension, the people of Michigan will remember in the 2024 election. I think that will be viewed as something like the Democrats that just will not be allowed to stand, and she will be, to the best of their ability, punished for it. Well, we know it's coming. I think it's important as people, pro-Palestinian supporters and just supporters of, decent politics and, just good people in politics need to be very, very aware of this coming up. And what is just generally a very, very disturbing situation. So the New York Times, as you can see, is just raising the ground. Many, many people in our district are feeling unsafe. At gathering in solidarity with Israel hostages this week at Adat Shalom Synagogue, Jeremy Moss, a Democratic state senator from Southfield, a suburb with a large Jewish population in Mrs. Tlaib's district, spoke with concerned constituents. I had so many people coming up to me saying they don't feel seen, heard, or represented. The following night, in the majority Arab American enclave of Dearborn, at a memorial for Palestinian casualties of the Israeli invasion, speakers denounced the censure of Ms. Tlaib in Congress for her statements on the conflict. Khalid Tarani, a Palestinian American activist, compared Tlaib's censure to that of Joshua Reed Giddings, a congressman and abolitionist who was censured by his House colleagues in 1842 for introducing resolutions opposing the slave trade, saying, quote, "I guess history is repeating itself." This year, though, I think it's important to say, thanks to a redistricting shakeup, she began representing one of the largest Arab American communities in the country, as well as parts of the largest Jewish community in the Detroit area. And it seems, I haven't been able to fully, conduct a full, perfect electoral analysis, but, it kind of goes roughly. So again, time to bring out your kind of visual map, right? So say we're looking at Michigan, it kind of looks like a big mitten almost with the, the glove, the UP Upper Peninsula, kind of that thumb up on the top almost. If we can pull it up, I'm pulling up now. The mitten or the Upper Peninsula is kind of just hanging out of nowhere. I guess the mitten would be like, Bay City, just that northern part. But anyway, you got Detroit all the way down in the bottom right-hand corner, and if it's a very, very big, very, very sprawling city, and kind of a very, very big suburban setting as well, especially with the suburbs north of Detroit. So it is kind of structured to kind of the western side. It obviously has the Detroit River running through it, which is a very, very big part, closer to the downtown of the city. Then you kind of got it going out more and more, where you get to just north of like this area called Wayne, and kind of the center. It's kind of like an outer part, I guess, would you say suburb, or kind of a very close, a proximal city to Detroit, kind of just north of it, is Dearborn. That is obviously the largest Muslim American community in America, or Arab American community in America. In her district, so that is kind of almost to the left of Detroit, so that would be more towards the west, more towards than the north. I apologize. So you got, Dearborn, she represents that, and then it kind of sprawls out further into, Dearborn already kind of on the outside of Detroit. It sprawls out further northwards and westwards, so into the suburbs, and there's Southfield was a great example of the kind of more affluent, more northern suburban Detroit Jewish community suburbs that we talked about, that represent a kind of stark contrast between, that, a place like that, which is very, much more affluent, much more, predominantly Jewish, probably, I think, the most Jewish place in Detroit, this article says. And then you got Dearborn, which is probably the most Arab place in the country. So, on November 3rd, she posted this video, the very, very controversial video that, a lot of people criticized her for, and probably the reason why she got condemned and censured in the House, saying from the river to the sea, and saying that Joe Biden supported the genocide of the Palestinian people. And again, Tlaib said she saw it as an aspirational call for freedom, human rights, and peaceful coexistence. But there are already people building pressure. Democratic Majority for Israel, a group led by the Democratic pollster Mark Mellman and closely tied, by the way, to AIPAC, is running television ads in the Detroit area criticizing Tlaib. I think Congresswoman Tlaib is radically out of step with her colleagues in Congress, radically out of step with the Democratic Party, and radically out of step with the Democrats in Michigan. Mr. Melman says, we hope she will change her views, and if not, perhaps somebody might be interested in running against her. That to me means that they got someone lined up, and if not, they will invent somebody in a lab to run against Rashida Tlaib. They're frothing at the mouth to get her out of here. Because she has transgressed, not only just, I say they, should be for all the people out there, be very specific on what I mean. I think you can look at the Democratic establishment, not just the, a lot of people would say, oh, you're talking about, the Israel lobby, and by extension, the Jews, and all that stuff. But I think it is, if you look at the situation the correct way, you're seeing the Democrats who have been pissed off with her for a long time. She's, been in kind of direct conflict with leadership for a long time. And the unmitigated gall, at least in their perspective, of Rashida Tlaib to come out and say that the Democratic Party will get punished in 2024 because the leader of that party, Joe Biden, supported a genocide. Like, that is something the leadership in Washington will be furious about and trying to get, you use any means necessary to get her out of there. And, really, when it comes to that, AIPAC and by extension DMFI are just willing partners because a lot of those people also happen to be pro-Israel too. So they won't have to, pony up the big bucks. DMFI will happily do it for them so they can stay, pro-party unity and all of that. So either way, though, we know it's coming. Rashida Tlaib under threat. So I think be ready. Get those fundraising numbers up, and when I think the time comes, there will be a big movement to, knock on doors, phone bank, and support somebody who has been probably the biggest pro-Palestinian defender, in national politics, hands down. Want to end today's show, not with me talking, but with me reading a really, really influential piece by Hind Qudri of Gaza. She was someone who has been one of these journalists on the ground, but was able to flee south on Friday. She talks about that experience and just the time, leading up to it and the process of fleeing in and of itself. To be clear, she was able to flee from the north to the south of Gaza, not leave Gaza itself. And the south is, by the way, by all accounts, is essentially just slightly less dangerous than the north is at this point. All right, so here she says, it was Thursday night when we started to negotiate. Do we need to evacuate to the south or not? The F-16s did not leave the sky. The bombing did not stop. The live ammunition was very close. The sky was foggy. Gas, bombs, and white phosphorus filled the sky. It was hard for us to even breathe. Our job is to document the war, to let the world know what is happening. How could we leave? For hours we asked the question. I had a headache from overthinking. What if they kill us? What if they arrest us? One guy asked. I'm not leaving. I prefer dying here. Another said, we should leave. We have kids and families. We did everything we can. We reported everything. Despite the sound of the bombs, I urged myself to sleep. I wondered if this might be my last night in the office, my last night in the city. We had evacuated from the office 3 times in 30 days. We evacuated from the office to the Roots Hotel. British journalists there were targeted, so we evacuated to Al-Shifa Hospital. After the threats against the hospital were received, we chose to risk it and come back to our 3-room office in the Al-Ramal area near Al-Saraya. I used to live on the mat on the floor on my office. I had a private bathroom. The 11th floor office had the best view of Gaza. It was home when we were displaced. It was our tiny home. I slept as my colleagues were still debating. It was 6:30 when my colleague Ali woke me up. Get ready, we're leaving, he said hurriedly. Go where? Nowhere, I told him. Let's find another place to go. I don't want to leave. Hind, yallah, no time to negotiate. We do not have a lot of time, he said, stressing while he was packing his cameras in his backpack. I stood up from the mat. Everyone was packing, searching for their stuff. I realized that I do have ADHD, as I'm always suspected, because I had no idea where to start. It was less of a problem because I barely have clothes anyway, just a couple of dirty sweaters, my laptop, my camera. I've been displaced since October 9th. I grabbed my bag and I hurried with Ali to pick up his injured mom and my cousin. Ali drove so fast. We parked away from the Al-Shifa entrance. The entrance to the hospital has become a danger zone, with several having been bombed recently. We started walking so fast to try and enter the hospital. It was crowded with people rushing out. We started pushing people. It took us more than 10 minutes to reach the building from the entrance, a distance that normally takes just a minute or less to cross. Because people just team. Again, it's important to remember that Al-Shifa hospitals in general in Gaza, the only major places that any basic functions of life at this point can be made available. I went to find my cousin Sarah. She works as a surgeon and has been in Al-Shifa hospital since day one. Ollie went to get his injured mom and sister. I started knocking on the door. "Sarah, open the door, it's me, Hind," she said. I kept knocking for 3 minutes until another doctor opened the door. Sarah was sleeping. I woke her. "Hurry up, we're leaving," I told her. She gave no reaction and began packing her clothes. Ollie took his mother in a wheelchair. I took my cousins with a couple of doctors. The corridors were becoming empty, everyone in a rush. Even patients were evacuating. By now, we were far too many to fit in the car, so we began to walk. We walked with thousands of other civilians. I even saw a hospital bed being pushed along the way. Children, people in wheelchairs, the elderly, babies, everyone was carrying their backpacks, pillows, and mats. Together, we waited at the intersection for 40 minutes until Ali met us. Together, we walked. I studied looks on people's faces, terrified. They were holding white flags. A truck that normally carried cows was packed with people. Another truck that used to transport gas canisters took people to the south. People crying, angry, sad, eyes filled with fear. My emotions were blocked. All I could think was that I do not want to leave, that it was wrong to leave, that I must not leave. Everything was destroyed. Even the streets were damaged and destroyed. Everything was trying to my eyes were trying to document everything. I tried my best to capture everything in my eyes. I wanted to cry my tears out, but I held them inside. It's not the time to cry. I will cry later, I told myself. We started walking from the Dula Square, the launching point. We found donkey carts. They called out that they would take us as far as the Israeli tanks. We reserved 2 carts. The owner was in a hurry. He charged us 20 NIS, around $5 for a 10-minute ride. Some could not afford it, so they walked on foot. I saw people carrying cats, carrying their birds in their cages, holding their bags, taking as much as they could. We reached the area scraped flat by bulldozers. I saw 1 bulldozer, 2 tanks, and a dozen soldiers. The owner of the donkey carts told us that this was as far as they could take us. All the people started holding out their green IDs, raised their hands, and the white flags. Everyone was terrified. This was the first time many people in Gaza, especially kids, would see a tank or an Israeli soldier. I saw Israeli soldiers in 2016 when I left the Gaza Strip through Erez, the fortified border in the north. I was not scared. We were still walking. I was holding 2 bags, 1 on each shoulder. Ali's injured sister was leaning on me the whole way. She got shrapnel in her leg when Israelis targeted the Al-Shifa hospital entrance. As I walked with the crowd, I looked toward the ground. I saw baby blankets, baby slippers. I saw clothes, toys, bags. I'm sure people were too scared to go back and pick up the stuff they dropped. We walked over dead, decomposing bodies. And again, this is the part where they're crossing the Israeli tanks. And they didn't even bother to pick up the dead. We were thousands of us pushing each other on this one-way road. We wanted this to end. To our left was a tank and soldiers holding their rifles, watching us through binoculars on a sand hill. To our right were 4 soldiers standing in a bombed-out building, posing and taking selfies on the rubble. One group was stopped more than 4 times for no reason and let go for no reason. As we approached the soldiers, I saw a naked man standing in front of the sand hill alongside 3 other men with their heads down. Another man with a yellow 5-gallon water jug and blonde child were called over by soldiers. They asked the small boy to step closer without his father. The boy was terrified. Those of us walking past were worried the boy would be taken. The soldier told him there was nothing wrong. He just liked blonde kids. We kept walking. As we walked, pushing each other, we saw bombs, cars, dead bodies inside the cars. Flies filled the cars, feasting on the blood and the bodies inside. A newborn in front of me was crying. The mom was trying to make food for her as we were walking. She started nursing her without stopping the walk. Another mom was pulling her kids in the baby seats without a rope. A man pushed an injured woman in her wheelchair. It kept getting stuck in the sand. We kept walking, stopping, then walking. The soldiers a constant threat. It felt like years of walking that was only hours. It was packed, and we constantly looked between the crowds for each other. On the other side were people who were already in the south and came to pick us up. People in the South were searching for us, for people coming from the city. Everyone was tired, everyone was thirsty. I'd lost my cousin in the crowd of thousands, but found her at the end. She was crying. Her leg had given out. She was in intense pain. We helped her keep moving until we could find a car. I can't describe the sadness. We escaped from being killed or injured, but I did not want to leave. I did not want to leave the city. As we walked closer to where the cars were stationed, people started distributing water to us. They told us we were welcome and that their homes were open to us. We were so tired, I could not feel my shoulders or my legs. Everyone was happy we evacuated. Everyone was hugging us. We had safely made it, but I did not feel the same. A piece of my heart was left in the city, and I may never be able to go back and get it. It's impossible for me to imagine I abandoned my father's house, left it alone. He built that home with his own hands, and when he died in 2012, it stayed with the family. Our house in my family is something so precious to us. We do not know if our house is still standing or not, but we know that we are not in it. 15 minutes after we arrived, the people behind us were bombed. That's Hinkudari from Gaza, now in the south of Gaza. And for today, that's your Newsflash episode.